You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your actions. Most people want a better life. They want more success, more confidence, and more results. But wanting is not enough. The truth is that improvement does not happen by accident. It happens by choice. It happens when a person decides to stop waiting and start moving. Every single day you delay is a day that belongs to the person you could have been. Discipline is choosing what you want most over what you want right now. That sentence alone can change the direction of your entire life if you let it sink in deeply. In this video, you will learn 10 powerful and practical ways to force yourself to improve and take real action starting today. These are not theories. These are real steps that produce real results in real people's lives. If you are ready to stop living below your potential and finally become the person you are fully capable of being, then watch this entire video right now, because what you are about to learn will change everything. Number 1, decide right now that change starts with you. Let me tell you something that most people never want to hear. The reason your life has not changed yet is not because of your boss, your neighborhood, your past, or your lack of money. Every single day, millions of people wake up and look outside themselves for the reason they are stuck. They point fingers at the economy, at their family, at bad luck, at timing. But the truth that nobody wants to say out loud is this: you are the starting point of every change that will ever happen in your life. That is not a criticism. That is the most powerful thing I could ever say to you. Think about the last time something in your life actually improved. Really think about it. Something changed in how you thought, how you acted, or what you decided to do differently. You made a move. You chose something new. You stopped accepting the same result, and you pushed yourself in a new direction. That improvement did not come from the weather changing. It did not come from someone handing you a better situation. It came from a decision, came from you. That is the pattern of every success story ever told. A person decided, and then things began to shift. Most people spend years waiting for life to get better on its own. They believe that if enough time passes, things will naturally improve. They believe that one day the motivation will arrive, the courage will show up, and then they will be ready to take action. But here is what I have learned after years of studying human behavior and personal growth. Waiting is the most expensive habit a person can have. Every year you wait, you pay with your potential. Every month you delay, you pay with your progress. Every day you choose comfort over change. You move further from the person you could actually become. Time does not fix people. Decisions do. Now I want you to sit with this for a moment, because it matters deeply. There is a psychological force inside every human being that resists change. Scientists call it the status quo bias. Your brain is wired to prefer the familiar. Even when the familiar is painful, even when the familiar is keeping you broke, unhappy, or unfulfilled. Your mind will still fight to keep things the same because familiar feels safe. That is just how the human brain operates. But here is what separates the people who grow from the people who stay stuck. The ones who grow learn to make decisions in spite of that resistance. They feel the pull toward comfort and they decide anyway. They do not wait for the resistance to go away. They decide while the resistance is still there. I have talked to people all over the world, people from different backgrounds, different countries, different income levels. And the one thing that separates the ones who changed their lives from the ones who kept complaining is not talent. It is not money. It is not connections. It is the moment they stop blaming everything around them and said out loud, "This is on me." That sentence changes everything. When you take full ownership of your situation, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling like a victim, and you start feeling like a creator. You stop reacting to life, and you start directing it. That shift does not come from a book. It does not come from a seminar. It comes from a real, honest decision you make inside yourself. Let me give you a real picture of what this looks like in everyday life. Imagine two people working the same job, earning the same pay, living in the same city. One of them goes home every night and watches television for 4 hours. The other goes home and spends 1 hour learning something new, building a skill, reading, or planning a bit. 5 years later, those two people live completely different lives. Not because of luck, not because the world treated them differently, but because of what they decided to do with their time and energy. The deciding moment was not dramatic, it was quiet. It happened in a private moment when one person said, "I am going to do something different starting right now." That is the kind of decision I'm asking you to make today. Not a loud, dramatic announcement, not a motivational moment you feel once and forget next week. I am talking about a quiet, serious, deeply personal commitment you make to yourself. A commitment that says, from this point forward, I take responsibility for my growth. I take responsibility for my actions. I take responsibility for the results I get in my life. That kind of commitment feels heavy at first. It should, because it is real, because you are finally being honest with yourself about what your life requires from you. Here is something that psychology confirms and that I have seen proven in real life over and over again. The moment a person stops blaming external things for their situation, their stress actually decreases. It sounds backward, but it is true. When you believe the problem is outside you, you feel powerless because you cannot control outside things. But when you accept that you are the source of change, suddenly you have power again. Suddenly you have something to work with. You can change your habits. You can change your thinking. You can change your decisions. And none of those things require permission from anyone else. That power is already yours. Now, do not confuse this with saying your struggles are not real. They are real. Life is genuinely hard for a lot of people. Some people carry burdens that are heavy and unfair. I am not dismissing any of that. What I am saying is that even with those burdens, you still have a choice in how you respond. You still have the ability to decide what you will do next. Viktor Frankl survived unimaginable suffering and came out of it saying that the last human freedom is the ability to choose your response to any situation. That idea is not just inspiring, it is practically useful. Because it means that no matter what has happened to you, your next decision belongs to you. This is where most self-improvement advice goes wrong. People tell you to get motivated. People tell you to think positive. People tell you to visualize your dream life. And while some of those things have value, they skip the most important step. Before motivation, before vision, before strategy, there has to be a decision. A real decision, not a wish, not a hope, not a vague intention. A firm, clear, unwavering decision. That decision is what gives everything else a foundation to stand on. Without it, motivation fades after a few days. Without it, plans fall apart the first time. Life gets uncomfortable. The decision is the root. Everything else grows from there. Let me be completely direct with you right now. You already know what needs to change in your life. You do not need more information to figure that out. You know the habit that is holding you back. You know the area of your life that needs attention. You know the thing you have been avoiding. The knowledge is already there. What has been missing is the moment you stop negotiating with yourself and simply decide that today is the day it changes. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Not after the holidays or after the new year, right now. Because the version of you that keeps waiting for the right moment is the same version that has been stuck. A new result requires a new decision. I want you to think about the emotional cost of not changing. Not just the practical cost, but the emotional one. Think about how it feels to know you are capable of more, but not pursuing it. Think about the quiet frustration that builds up when you see another year pass and you are standing in the same place. It is the gap between who you are right now and who you know you could be. And that gap grows wider every time you delay a decision. Every time you postpone the moment of change, that gap becomes more painful. But you have the ability to close it, not by wishing it closed. By deciding to start closing it, The beautiful thing about this decision is that it costs you nothing to make it. You do not need money to decide. You do not need perfect circumstances to decide. You do not need anyone's approval to decide. All you need is the honesty to admit that you want more and the courage to say that getting more starts with you. That is the decision. It is simple, but it is not easy. Simple and easy are two very different things. This decision is simple in concept and challenging in practice. But every great journey a person has ever taken started with exactly this kind of quiet, personal, honest decision. The decision that change starts here. The decision that the person responsible for your growth is the same person reading these words right now. Number 2, set one small goal and begin it today. People overcomplicate the idea of getting started. They sit down, they think about everything they want to achieve, they look at how far they have to go, and then they feel overwhelmed before they even take a single step. The size of the dream scares them into doing nothing at all. And this is one of the most common and costly mistakes a person can make when trying to improve their life. The problem is not that your goal is too big. The problem is that you are trying to process the entire journey all at once instead of focusing on the one step that is right in front of you. Your mind cannot comfortably hold 10 years of effort and change all at one time, but it can absolutely handle one clear, specific, and small goal that you start working on today. Here is something that most people never learn about how the brain actually works when it comes to taking action. Your brain releases a chemical called dopamine, not just when you accomplish big things, but every time you make measurable progress towards something you care about. This means that when you complete even a small goal, your brain rewards you with a feeling of satisfaction and energy. That feeling makes you want to do more. It builds momentum. It creates a positive cycle where action leads to reward and reward leads to more action. The people who are most productive in life are not the ones with the most willpower. They are the ones who have learned how to use small wins to fuel bigger and bigger movement forward. Now, I want to be very precise about what I mean when I say a small goal, because this matters more than most people realize. A small goal is not a vague intention. It is not telling yourself you will try to be better this week. A real small goal is specific. It is measurable, and it has a clear starting point that you can act on immediately. Instead of saying, I want to get healthier, you say, I will walk for 15 minutes after dinner tonight. Instead of saying, I want to learn something new, you say, I will spend 30 minutes today studying one specific topic. The specificity is what makes it real. The moment you get specific, your brain stops treating the goal as an abstract idea and starts treating it as an actual task that needs to be done. Let me share with you the psychology behind why starting small works so powerfully in real life. There is a concept studied extensively in behavioral psychology called activation energy. Before any action can happen, a person needs a certain amount of mental and emotional energy just to get started. The bigger and more complex the task feels, the more activation energy it requires and the more likely a person is to avoid it. But when you break a goal down into its smallest possible starting point, you reduce the amount of energy needed to begin. You lower the barrier so much that the excuses you would normally use to avoid it, you make it nearly impossible to justify not starting. Because the first step is so small and so clear that even on your worst day you can do it. Think about what happens in the body and mind when you sit there knowing you need to do something, but you keep not doing it. There is a tension that builds inside you, a subtle but real discomfort that comes from the conflict between what you know you should do and what you are actually doing. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. It drains your mental energy. It makes you feel anxious without knowing exactly why. It sits in the background of your thoughts and weighs on your mood throughout the day. But the moment you start taking even a small action toward your goal, that tension begins to release. Your body physically relaxes. Your mind feels clearer. There is a genuine sense of relief that comes from moving in the right direction even slightly. I have observed something very specific in people who struggle to make progress in their lives, and I want to share this observation because it is important. Most of them do not lack talent and they do not lack desire. What they lack is a concrete starting point. They have enormous dreams and zero specific actions planned for today. They want a better career, but they have not written down one single step they will take this week. They want to improve their health, but they have not committed to one specific action they will take before the sun goes down today. The gap between wanting and doing is almost always filled by one thing, a clear and small enough action that can be started right now. That is the piece most people are missing. Here is my personal opinion on why people resist setting small goals. Deep down, a small goal does not feel impressive enough. People want to announce big dramatic plans because big plans feel important. They feel worthy of the dream they are chasing. But what I have learned, and what the evidence of thousands of successful people confirms, is that the person who quietly sets a small goal and actually does it today will always outperform the person who loudly announces a massive plan and never begins. Execution always beats intention. A small action taken consistently beats a big plan that never leaves the planning stage. The quiet starter wins every single time. Let me walk you through a real and practical way to apply this right now. Take whatever area of your life you most want to improve, just pick one. Now ask yourself, what is the smallest possible action I could take in that area today that would move me even 1% forward? Not 10%, not 50, just one. Write that action down. Give it a specific time. Decide exactly when today you will do it. And then do it without waiting to feel motivated, without waiting for perfect conditions, and without negotiating with yourself about whether the timing is right. That single act of doing one small thing you said you would do builds something priceless inside you. It builds self-trust, and self-trust is what everything else in personal growth is built on. There is an important difference between a goal you think about and a goal you write down, and I want to make this very clear. Research from the field of psychology consistently shows that people who write their goals down are significantly more likely to follow through on them. Writing a goal makes it concrete. It moves it from the world of ideas into the world of reality. When your goal exists only in your head, your brain still has the option of treating it as optional. But when it is written on paper in front of you with a specific action and a specific time, it becomes a commitment. It becomes real. Your brain treats it differently. It treats it as something that needs to be handled. Do not underestimate the power of writing one small goal down today and looking at it throughout the day. Let me speak directly to the person who has started things before and quit. The person who set goals in the past began with energy and then lost steam after a week or two. You did not fail because you were weak. You failed because your goal was not small enough or your starting point was not clear enough. When a goal requires a major lifestyle change on day one, it is designed to fail. The human body and mind resist sudden large changes. They adapt much better to gradual and consistent change over time. So if you have tried and quit before, that is not evidence that you cannot do it. It is evidence that you need to start smaller. Scale it back until it feels almost too easy. And then do it again tomorrow. Then again the day after. That is how change actually sticks in real human beings living real lives. One small goal started today does something that no amount of thinking, planning, or wishing can ever do. It creates evidence. Real, personal, undeniable evidence that you are someone who takes action. Every time you follow through on a small commitment you made to yourself, you strengthen your belief in your own ability to change. And that belief is not something someone can give you from the outside. It only grows from the inside out through repeated experience of doing what you said you would do. You begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who wants to change, and you start identifying as someone who actually does change. That identity shift is worth more than any motivational speech, any book, or any program you will ever come across. It is built one small goal at a time, starting today. Number 3, stop waiting for the perfect moment to start. There is a sentence that has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. That sentence is, "I will start when the time is right." People say it with complete sincerity. They believe it. They feel like they are being responsible by waiting until conditions improve, until they feel more ready, until life settles down a little. But what they do not realize is that this sentence is one of the most convincing lies the human mind has ever produced. The perfect moment is not hiding around the corner, waiting for you to find it. It does not exist in the way most people imagine it. And every day spent waiting for it is a day of real potential that gets used up and never returned. Let me tell you what waiting actually looks like from the out. See it clearly when they are inside of it. A person has an idea, a goal, or a change they want to make. They feel excited about it initially. Then their brain starts producing reasons why now is not quite the right time. Maybe money is a little tight. Maybe work is busy. Maybe they just need a few more weeks to prepare. So they wait. And while they wait, life keeps moving. New problems appear. New reasons to delay emerge. And slowly, without even noticing it, months turn into years. The goal that once felt urgent and exciting starts to feel distant and almost embarrassing to still be holding on to. That is what waiting does to a person over time. Here is something I want you to understand from a psychological standpoint, because it completely changes how you see this problem. Waiting for the perfect moment is not actually about timing. It is about fear. When a person says they are waiting for the right conditions, what they are really doing is protecting themselves from the possibility of failure, judgment, or disappointment. The brain is extraordinarily good at disguising fear as logic. It dresses fear up in reasonable-sounding language like preparation, timing, and responsibility. And because it sounds so reasonable, most people never question it. They accept the excuse as wisdom when it is actually avoidance wearing a very convincing outfit. I want to give you a real example of how this plays out in everyday life, because examples make truth feel real and personal. Think about someone who wants to start their own business. They have the idea, they have the passion, but they tell themselves they will start once they have saved a certain amount of money. Once they save that amount, they tell themselves they need a little more. Then they need the right time of year. Then they need to learn one more skill. Then they need to wait until their current job is less demanding. Years pass. The business never starts. Not because the conditions were never right, but because the person kept moving the finish line for what ready looked like. That is not strategic planning. That is fear operating under a false name. Now here's my direct opinion on this, and I say it with full conviction. The people who have built remarkable lives, created businesses, written books, transformed their health, and changed their circumstances almost universally started before they were ready. They started with incomplete information. They started with limited resources. They started while still feeling uncertain and underprepared. And the act of starting is precisely what taught them what they needed to know. You cannot learn to swim by studying water from the edge of the pool. You learn by getting in and moving. The discomfort of starting before you feel ready is not a sign that you are making a mistake. It is a sign that you are actually growing. There is a very well-documented psychological pattern called analysis paralysis, and it is directly connected to the habit of waiting for the perfect moment. When a person thinks too long about a decision without taking action, the thinking itself becomes a substitute for doing. The more you analyze, plan, and research without ever beginning, the more your brain starts to feel like it is being productive, when in reality, it is simply spinning in place. Analysis gives a feeling of progress without the reality of it. And the longer this continues, the harder it becomes to actually start, because the habit of non-action gets stronger with every passing day. Your brain literally becomes more comfortable with planning than with doing. Let me give you a direct and practical way to break this pattern, because understanding a problem is only half the work. The other half is taking a specific action to change it. The next time you catch yourself waiting for better circumstances before you start something important, do this one thing. Ask yourself honestly, what is the absolute worst realistic outcome if I start today with what I have right now? Not a dramatic worst case, a realistic one. You will find in almost every situation that the realistic worst outcome is something you can handle, learn from, and recover from. And when you compare that manageable risk to the guaranteed cost of another month, another year, or another decade of waiting, the choice becomes very clear. Imperfect action taken today beats perfect planning that never becomes action. Something else I think about deeply when it comes to this topic is the relationship between self-image and starting. When a person waits too long to begin something they care about, something subtle but damaging happens to the way they see themselves. They start to feel like someone who talks but does not act. They start to feel like someone who has dreams but does not pursue them. And that self-image becomes a self-fulfilling pattern. The longer you wait, the more your identity becomes attached to being a person who waits. But the moment you start, even imperfectly, and even on a small scale, you begin rewriting that self-image. You become someone who takes action. And that new identity creates new behavior, which creates new results. Conditions will never be perfect. And I need you to hear that not as a discouraging fact. If you are waiting for a time when you have no stress, no competing responsibilities, plenty of money, full energy, and complete clarity, you are designing a situation that human life simply does not reliably produce. Everyone who has ever done something meaningful has done it within the messy, imperfect, inconvenient reality of everyday life. They did not do it because the stars aligned. They did it because they stopped requiring the stars to align before they would begin. That shift in requirement is the actual breakthrough. It is the moment a person graduates from wishing to doing. Let me speak to the emotional reality of this because it deserves to be said plainly. There is a specific kind of sadness that settles into a person who has spent years waiting to start something they care about. It is not a loud, dramatic sadness. It is quiet. It shows up in moments of stillness when there is nothing to distract from the awareness of how much time has passed. It shows up when you meet someone who simply started without waiting and has already built something real while you were still preparing. That feeling is important information. It is your life communicating to you that it is ready for more. The answer to that feeling is not more wait. The answer is to start today with whatever you have available right now. I want to draw your attention to something that rarely gets talked about in conversations about starting and taking action. Every skill you need, every resource you are waiting to have, every confidence you are hoping to feel before you begin, almost all of it develops after you start, not before. Clarity comes from action. Confidence comes from experience. Resources often appear when you are already in motion because people and opportunities are attracted to visible effort. You will never feel fully ready before you begin something new and significant. Readiness is not a prerequisite for starting. Readiness is a reward that comes after you have already started and pushed through the initial discomfort of uncertainty. The perfect moment you are waiting for will not announce itself. It will not tap you on the shoulder and say, now is the time. Life does not work that way. The person who waits for permission from perfect circumstances waits forever. But the person who looks at an imperfect day, an imperfect situation, and an imperfect version of themselves and decides to begin anyway is the person who eventually looks back with genuine satisfaction. Not because everything went smoothly, but because they did not let imperfection stop them from moving. Every great thing that has ever been built was built by someone who started on an ordinary, imperfect, unremarkable day. Today is that day for you. Number 4, build a daily habit that pushes you forward. Your life right now is the sum of your habits, not your intentions, not your dreams, not your potential. Your actual daily habits are what have built the life you are currently living. And they are what will build the life you live 5 years from now. Most people understand this on the surface, but very few people take it seriously enough to act on it with real discipline. They treat habits as nice additions to their routine rather than the actual architecture of their future. But when you truly grasp the fact that what you do every single day determines who you become, something inside you changes. You stop treating your daily routine as unimportant, and you start treating it as one of the most significant decisions you make. Here is what I find fascinating about habits from a scientific and behavioral standpoint. approximately 40 to 45% of everything a person does on any given day is not a conscious decision. It is automatic behavior driven by habit. That means nearly half of your day is already running on autopilot. The question is not whether you have habits. You absolutely do. The question is whether your current habits are pulling you forward toward the person you want to be or quietly holding you in the same place year after year. Most people have never sat down and honestly evaluated which category their daily habits fall into. And that honest evaluation is where meaningful change almost always begins. Let me explain how a habit actually forms in the brain, because this understanding is genuinely useful and not just interesting information. Every habit follows a three-part loop that neuroscientists have identified through decades of research. There is a cue, which is a trigger that signals the brain to begin a behavior. There is a routine, which is the behavior itself. And there is a reward, which is the feeling or outcome that reinforces the behavior and makes the brain want to repeat it. This loop runs automatically once it is established. The reason bad habits are so hard to break is that their loop is already deeply grooved into the brain's neural pathways. And the reason good habits feel difficult at first is that their loop is not yet established. But once you repeat a new behavior consistently enough, it becomes just as automatic as the bad habits you are trying to replace. Now, here is something I want you to think about carefully, because it reframes the entire challenge of building better habits. The difficulty you feel when trying to build a new habit is not a sign that the habit is wrong for you or that you are not cut out for it. That difficulty is simply the feeling of your brain forming new neural connections. It is the sensation of rewiring. And just like physical training produces muscle soreness that eventually leads to strength, the mental discomfort of building a new habit is producing new patterns that will eventually run effortlessly. The discomfort is not your enemy. It is the actual process of change happening inside your brain in real time. Most people quit during this phase without realizing they are right in the middle of the transformation they want. I want to share my direct perspective on why most people fail to build lasting habits. And I believe this insight is something most habit building advice leaves out entirely. People fail not because they chose the wrong habit, but because they chose a habit that was too large and too disconnected from their existing daily structure. They decide to wake up at 5 in the morning when they currently wake up at 8. They decide to exercise for an hour every day when they currently exercise 0 minutes per week. They try to install massive new behaviors into a life that has no existing structure to support them. And when those behaviors collapse under the weight of real life, they interpret that collapse as personal failure instead of design failure. The habit was poorly designed. The person was not weak. The most effective approach to building a daily habit that actually sticks is to attach the new behavior to something you already do every single day without thinking about it. This is called habit stacking, and it is one of the most practically powerful tools in all of behavioral psychology. If you already make coffee every morning, attach 5 minutes of reading to that routine. If you already eat lunch every day, attach 10 minutes of planning or learning to that time. By connecting a new behavior to an existing automatic one, you use the existing habit as the cue that triggers the new one. You borrow the automaticity of the established routine and transfer it to the new behavior you are trying to build. This approach works because it fits human nature instead of fighting against it. Here is something that I think about a great deal when it comes to daily habits and forward progress. There is an enormous difference between a habit that keeps your life stable and a habit that actively pushes your life forward. Brushing your teeth is a maintenance habit. It keeps things from getting worse, but reading for 30 minutes every morning is a growth habit. It adds to your knowledge, your thinking, and your capability every single day. Exercising consistently is a growth habit. Reviewing your goals every morning is a growth habit. Spending 30 minutes working on a skill that matters to your future is a growth habit. The question worth asking yourself right now is how many of your daily habits are maintenance habits, and how many are genuine growth habits that are actively building a better version of you. Let me walk you through a real scenario that illustrates the compounding power of one single daily habit practiced consistently over time. Imagine you commit to learning one new thing related to your career or your goals for just 30 minutes every single day. In 1 week, that is 3.5 hours of focused learning. In 1 month, it is roughly 15 hours. In 1 year, it is approximately 180 hours of deep, specific, intentional learning in an area that matters to your future. Now compare that to a person who intends to learn more, but never builds it into their daily routine. After 1 year, one person has 180 hours of real knowledge and skill development. The other has the same amount they started with. The difference was not talent or intelligence. It was one daily habit practiced without exception. The emotional component of daily habits is something that does not get nearly enough attention, and I want to address it directly. When you successfully complete a growth habit every day, even a small one, you feel a specific kind of quiet pride. It is not loud or dramatic. It is a calm, steady confidence that builds in the background of your daily life. You start the day knowing you are doing something that serves your future. That feeling influences every other area of your day. It affects how you carry yourself, how you make decisions, and how you respond to challenges. Conversely, when you skip your habits consistently, you feel a specific kind of low-grade disappointment in yourself that is hard to name, but very easy to feel. That feeling compounds too, just in the opposite direction. One of the most important things I can tell you about building a daily habit is this: never miss 2 days in a row. Missing 1 day happens. Life is unpredictable, and imperfect days are guaranteed. Missing 1 day does not destroy a habit, but missing 2 days in a row begins to reestablish the old pattern and weaken the new one. The rule of never missing twice is not just practical advice. It is psychologically protective because it prevents a single bad day from becoming a permanent return to old behavior. 1 missed day is an interruption. 2 missed days starts to become a decision. Protect your streak not out of rigid perfectionism, but out of genuine respect for the progress you have already built. Building a daily habit that pushes you forward also requires that you eliminate or reduce the friction that makes the habit hard to start. If you want to read every morning, put the book on your pillow the night before, so it is the first thing you see. If you want to exercise, lay out your clothes the night before, so there is no decision making required in the morning. If you want to work on a personal project each day, keep your workspace set up and ready so that sitting down and starting costs you zero preparation time. Reducing the number of small decisions and obstacles between you and your habit makes it significantly more likely that you will follow through, especially on the days when your energy and motivation are lower than usual. Environment design is one of the most underrated tools in building lasting behavioral change. What you do every single day matters. What you do every single day matters more than what you do occasionally. A great conversation with a mentor once a year does not build wisdom. It is the daily contact with the things that matter, the daily repetition of behaviors that serve your growth, that produces real and lasting change in a person's life and character. The person you will be in 3 years is being shaped right now by what you choose to do today, tomorrow, and the day after that. Not by one big moment of inspiration, but by the quiet, consistent, unglamorous practice of showing up every day and doing the thing that moves you forward. Number 5, surround yourself with people who inspire real growth. You will become like the people you spend the most time with. That is not a casual observation. That is one of the most consistently proven patterns in all of human psychology and sociology. The people around you shape your beliefs about what is possible, your standards for what is acceptable, your daily habits, your emotional responses, and even your long-term ambitions. Most people select their social circle based on convenience, history, or comfort. They stay close to the people they grew up near, the people they work alongside, or the people who feel familiar and easy to be around. Very few people deliberately and intentionally evaluate whether the people in their lives are actually contributing to their growth or quietly limiting it. That evaluation is one of the most important things a person can do for their future. Let me give you the science behind this because it deserves more than just a motivational statement. Human beings are deeply social creatures, and our brains are wired to mirror the people around us. There is a specific type of brain cell called a mirror neuron that activates both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that same action. This neurological reality means that your brain is constantly and automatically absorbing the attitudes, energy, behaviors, and standards of the people you spend time with. You are not just influenced by others through their words or their advice. You are influenced at a level that happens below conscious awareness. Your brain is literally mirroring the people around you, whether you want it to or not. This makes your choice of company one of the most consequential decisions in your life. Think about what it actually feels like to spend consistent time with someone who is genuinely driven, focused, and growing. There is an energy in those interactions that is difficult to fully describe, but very easy to feel. You leave conversations with them thinking differently. You find yourself questioning your own limits in a productive way. Their standard of effort quietly raises your own. Their questions make you think more seriously about your direction. Their discipline makes your own excuses feel less convincing. That is not accidental. That is the real and measurable effect of proximity to people who take their growth seriously. It is not that they lecture you or push you. Simply being near someone who operates at a higher level pulls your own thinking and behavior upward. Now, I want to address something that most people find genuinely uncomfortable about this topic, and I am going to say it plainly because dancing around it does not serve you. Some of the people currently closest to you may not be contributing to your growth. They may not be bad people. They may genuinely care about you. But caring about someone and inspiring their growth are two completely different things. There are people who love you deeply and still unconsciously discourage your ambition because your growth makes them uncomfortable with their own lack of it. There are people who are kind and loyal and still drain your energy, fill your thinking with negativity, and reinforce the exact habits and beliefs you are trying to change. Recognizing this is not a betrayal of those relationships. It is an honest assessment of what your environment is actually producing in you. Here is something I have observed consistently over many years of studying personal development and human behavior. People who make dramatic positive changes in their lives almost always point to a shift in their social environment as one of the primary catalysts. They started spending time around people who were doing what they wanted to do. They found a mentor who showed them what was possible. They joined a group where higher standards were simply the norm. And being in that environment changed them not through effort alone, but through exposure. When growth is the standard around you, you rise to meet it naturally. When stagnation is the norm around you, you drift toward it without even noticing. The environment does the heavy lifting that willpower alone could never sustain. Let me be very direct about my opinion on this because I think it matters enormously. You do not need to dramatically cut people out of your life to improve your social environment. That approach is often unrealistic and unnecessarily harsh. What you do need to do is be intentional about adding new people to your life who operate at the level you are aspiring to reach. Seek out people who are already doing what you want to do. Attend events, join communities, take courses, find online groups, read deeply about people whose lives and results you respect. Every time you add a new voice of genuine growth and excellence into your regular experience, you shift the average of your environment. Addition is often more practical and more powerful than subtraction. There is a specific emotional experience that comes from being in the wrong social environment for too long. And it is worth naming clearly. It is a feeling of smallness, a feeling that your dreams are somehow too large or too serious for the people around you. When you share an ambition and the response is skepticism, mockery, or indifference, something in you shrinks a little over time. And with enough repetition, you stop sharing. Then you stop dreaming as boldly. Then you start adjusting your goals downward to match the expectations of the people around you. That process is gradual and almost invisible while it is happening. But the result is a person who is living significantly below their actual capability, because their environment consistently communicated that more was not realistic or appropriate. I want you to think about the concept of standards and how profoundly social environments set them. When you are around people who read consistently, reading becomes a normal thing that people simply do. When you are around people who exercise daily, daily exercise becomes the standard rather than the exception. When you are around people who talk seriously about their goals, their finances, their learning, and their personal development, those conversations become your normal too. And what becomes normal to you becomes easy for you. The behaviors that your environment normalizes are the behaviors that require the least mental energy to maintain. This is why placing yourself in a growth-oriented environment is not just motivating, it is genuinely efficient. It reduces the effort required to maintain good habits, because those habits are simply what the people around you do. Now let me speak to the person who feels isolated in their desire to grow. The person who genuinely does not have people in their immediate life who share their drive or their standards. This is a real and common situation, and it deserves a real and practical response. The absence of growth-oriented people in your immediate physical environment does not mean you are without options. Books give you access to the thinking of the most disciplined, successful, and insightful people who have ever lived. Podcasts and recorded talks let you spend your commute or your morning routine absorbing the perspectives of people who have built remarkable things. Online communities connect you with people around the world who share your goals and your commitment to growth. You can engineer your social environment with intention, even when geography or circumstance limits your immediate options. The quality of conversations you have on a regular basis is one of the clearest indicators of the direction your life is heading. When your daily conversations revolve around complaints, gossip, criticism of others, and the reasons why things cannot be done, your thinking follows those conversations. Your brain spends its energy on the problems and negativity that dominate your social interactions. But when your regular conversations involve ideas, opportunities, lessons learned, goals being pursued, and honest feedback between people who want each other to grow, your brain begins to operate in that register consistently. You start thinking more creatively, more ambitiously, and more constructively as a natural result of the conversational environment you live inside every day. One thing that I believe deeply, and that I think changes the way people approach their social circle, is this: inspiring people are not just those who have achieved great results. They are also people who are genuinely in pursuit of growth with honesty and commitment. You do not only need to surround yourself with people who have already arrived. You need people who are seriously in motion. Someone who is working hard, learning actively, and pushing through real challenges is just as valuable to your environment as someone who has already achieved significant success. The energy of genuine pursuit is contagious. The discipline of someone who is in the process of building something real is something you can feel and absorb. Shared pursuit is a powerful bond and a powerful accelerant. Take a few minutes after this and think honestly about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Consider what they talk about regularly. Consider how they respond when you share a goal or an ambition. Consider whether spending time with them leaves you feeling more energized and motivated or more drained and doubtful. Consider whether their daily habits are ones that you admire and want to adopt, or ones that you know are holding you back by association. That honest assessment is not about judging them as people. It is about taking responsibility for what your environment is building inside you. Because the person you are becoming is being shaped right now by the company you keep, the conversations you participate in, and the standards that the people around you demonstrate every single day. Number 6, write down what you want and why it matters. Most people carry their goals in their head and wonder why those goals never become reality. They think about what they want while lying in bed at night. They feel it strongly for a few minutes, and then the feeling fades as the demands of the day take over. The goal stays in the mind as a vague, floating intention that never quite solidifies into something real enough to act on. And this is one of the most overlooked reasons why so many people stay stuck, despite genuinely wanting more for their lives. A goal that only exists in your mind is still just a thought. A thought has no weight, no shape, no permanence. But the moment you write that goal down on paper, something fundamentally changes. It stops being a wish and starts being a declaration. Let me give you the neuroscience behind this, because understanding why something works makes you far more likely to actually do it. When you write something down by hand, your brain engages in a process that is significantly more complex than simply thinking about the same thing. The act of writing activates the reticular activating system, which is a network in your brain responsible for filtering information and deciding what deserves your attention. When you write a goal down, you are essentially sending a signal to your brain that this is important, this is real, and this is something worth paying attention to. Your brain then begins unconsciously scanning your environment for information, opportunities, and connections that are relevant to what you wrote. You do not just record a goal when you write it. You program your brain to start working on it. Here is something I find deeply important about this practice that goes beyond the science. Writing forces clarity. And clarity is one of the rarest and most valuable things a person pursuing growth can have. When a goal exists only in your mind, it can stay comfortably vague. You can tell yourself you want a better life, more success, or improved health, without ever defining what any of those things actually look like in specific, measurable terms. But when you sit down to write it, the vagueness is immediately exposed. You have to decide exactly what you mean. You have to get specific. You have to choose words that capture the real thing you want, rather than the comfortable blur of a half-formed desire. That process of getting specific is itself a form of mental discipline that most people never practice. Now, I want to address the second part of this outline, because it is just as important as writing down what you want, and it is the part that most goal-setting advice completely skips over: writing down why it matters. The what gives you a destination. The why gives you fuel to reach it. And without fuel, even the clearest destination becomes unreachable when the road gets difficult. Your reason for wanting something is what determines how hard you will work for it, how long you will persist when obstacles appear, and how seriously you will protect the time and energy required to pursue it. A goal without a compelling reason behind it is like a car with no fuel in the engine. It looks fine from the outside, but it will not take you anywhere. Let me explain this through the lens of human psychology, because it is genuinely illuminating. Psychologists who study motivation have identified two primary types of motivation that drive human behavior. The first is intrinsic motivation, which comes from internal sources like personal growth, genuine passion, meaning, and alignment with your values. The second is extrinsic motivation, which comes from external sources like money, recognition, or social approval. Research consistently shows that intrinsic motivation produces more sustained effort, greater creativity, and deeper satisfaction than extrinsic motivation alone. When you write down why your goal matters to you at a personal, emotional, and values-based level, you are connecting your goal to intrinsic motivation. You are giving yourself a reason that does not depend on external conditions to remain powerful. Here is my honest opinion on why people skip writing down their goals and their reasons. And I say this having observed this pattern in many people over a long time. Writing it down makes it real. And when something is real, avoiding it or abandoning it carries a cost that a vague mental intention never does. As long as a goal exists only in your mind, you can quietly let it go without fully admitting to yourself that you gave up. There is no written evidence of what you said you wanted. There is no documented reason you gave yourself for why it mattered. But when it is on paper, quitting requires you to consciously walk away from something you declared. That accountability is uncomfortable. And that discomfort is exactly what makes writing so powerful. It removes the easy exit, Let me walk you through a specific and practical format for writing down what you want in a way that maximizes its effectiveness. Because the how matters as much as the what, start by writing the goal in positive present tense language, as if it is already in the process of happening. Instead of writing, "I hope to improve my finances," write, "I am building financial stability by doing specific things every week." Then write at least 3 deeply personal reasons why this goal matters to you. Not surface reasons, real ones. The kind of reasons that connect to how you want to feel, who you want to become, what you want to be able to provide or experience. Then write 1 specific action you will take today toward that goal. This complete format takes less than 10 minutes, and it is more powerful than hours of unfocused thinking. There is an emotional dimension to writing down your goals that I want to describe carefully, because it often surprises people who try this practice seriously for the first time. When you sit quietly with a piece of paper and write honestly about what you truly want and why it genuinely matters to you, it can feel surprisingly emotional. You may feel a sense of longing for what you have not yet built. You may feel a quiet urgency about time that is already past. You may feel a mix of hope and fear that the thing you are writing about might not happen. Those feelings are not signs that you should stop. They are signs that you are finally being honest with yourself about something that actually matters deeply to you. That honesty is the foundation of real and lasting motivation. Something else worth understanding about the practice of writing your goals is the difference between writing them once and reading them consistently. Writing a goal once and putting the paper in a drawer produces far less change than writing your goals and reading them every single morning before your day begins. When you read your written goals daily, you are repeatedly reinforcing the neural pathways associated with those goals. You are keeping them at the front of your conscious attention, rather than letting them drift to the background while the noise of daily life takes over. The repetition of reading your goals regularly is what keeps them alive and active in your thinking. It is what prevents the weeks from slipping by without meaningful progress. Because your goals are quietly invisible, I want to specifically address the why component one more time, because I do not think it can be overstated. Your reason for wanting something is the engine behind every effort you will make toward it. When the work gets hard, and it will get hard, you will not be sustained by the memory of an exciting moment. When you set a goal, you will be sustained by the deep and personal reason you attach to that goal. When you feel like stopping, your why is what keeps you moving. A person who wants to improve their health for vague reasons will quit when the process becomes inconvenient. But a person who has written down that they want to be healthy because they refuse to let their children watch them give up on themselves will find reserves of commitment that a shallow reason could never produce. The depth of your why determines the height of your follow-through. Writing is also a tool for processing the emotional obstacles that get in the way of pursuing your goals. When you feel resistant, afraid, or discouraged about something you want to achieve, writing about that resistance can reveal things that are not immediately obvious to your conscious mind. You might discover a fear of failure hiding beneath the surface of a procrastination habit. You might find that a goal you thought you wanted actually belongs to someone else's expectations of you, rather than your own authentic desire. Writing creates a conversation between you and yourself that thinking alone rarely produces. It surfaces what is real, what is driving you, what is stopping you, and what you actually need to move forward with honesty and commitment. The act of writing what you want and why it matters is not a one-time exercise you do and forget. It is a living practice that evolves as you evolve. What you want will become clearer as you pursue it. Your reasons will deepen as your commitment grows. New goals will emerge as old ones are achieved. Revisit what you have written regularly. Update it when your thinking sharpens. Add to it when new desires and reasons emerge. Let your written goals be a document that grows with you rather than a snapshot of a single moment. Every time you sit down to write about what you want and why it truly matters, you are doing something that most people will never do. You are treating your own future with the seriousness and deliberate attention that it genuinely deserves. Number 7, replace your excuses with a single bold action. An excuse feels like a reason. That is what makes it so dangerous. When you tell yourself you cannot start because you do not have enough time, enough money, enough knowledge, or enough support. It does not feel like avoidance. It feels like an honest assessment of your situation. It feels responsible and even logical. But here's the truth that most people spend years avoiding. Excuses and reasons sound identical on the surface, but they produce completely opposite results in your life. A real reason informs a better decision. An excuse stops all decisions entirely. And the person who lives inside a pattern of excuses is not protecting themselves from failure. They are guaranteeing a different kind of failure. The quiet, slow, invisible failure of a life that never moved forward, because the person inside it always had a convincing explanation for why now was not the right time. Let me tell you something about the psychology of excuses that most people have never considered. Excuses are not random. They are not careless. They are produced by a very specific part of your mind that is working extremely hard to protect you from discomfort, uncertainty, and the vulnerability that comes with genuine effort. When you make an excuse, your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is minimizing perceived risk. It is keeping you in the familiar zone where outcomes are predictable and effort is not required. Understanding this does not mean excuses are acceptable. It means they are understandable. And there is a big difference between those two things. You can have compassion for why your brain produces excuses while still refusing to let those excuses determine the direction of your life. Here is what I have come to believe after observing this pattern in people across every background and circumstance. Every excuse a person makes is a transaction. You trade the possibility of progress for the comfort of staying still. And like every transaction, it has a cost. The cost of one excuse seems small in the moment. You save yourself the discomfort of one difficult action, and the day moves on. But the cost accumulates. Every excuse you accept as valid makes the next excuse easier to produce and easier to believe. Over time, excuse-making becomes a reflex. It becomes the automatic response to any situation that requires effort, change, or risk. And a person in that state does not feel lazy or dishonest. They feel genuinely stuck. They feel like circumstances are working against them. They cannot see that the pattern they built one excuse at a time is the actual source of their stagnation. Now, I want to introduce you to an idea that I believe is one of the most practically powerful concepts in all of personal development. It is the idea of the single bold action, not a plan, not a series of steps. One single action that is direct, specific, and taken immediately in the face of whatever excuse is currently in your way. The reason this concept is so powerful is that it bypasses the mental negotiation that excuses thrive on. When you commit to one bold action right now, you give your excuse-producing mind no room to operate. There is no planning phase where doubts can multiply. There is no preparation period where resistance can grow. There is just one action taken now that interrupts the pattern and proves to your nervous system that movement is possible. Let me give you a very concrete picture of what replacing an excuse with a single bold action actually looks like in everyday life. Imagine a person who wants to start a small business, but consistently tells themselves they do not know enough yet. The excuse is, I need more information before I can begin. The single bold action is not to create a full business plan. It is to spend 1 hour today talking to one person who has already built what they want to build and asking them 3 specific questions. That is it. One action, 1 hour, one conversation. That action does not require the excuse to be fully resolved. It does not require the person to feel ready. It simply moves them one step past the place where the excuse was holding them. And that one step changes everything because it creates evidence that movement is possible even without perfect conditions. I want to share my direct and honest opinion about why people choose excuses over action. And I say this not to judge, but to illuminate. Excuses protect the ego. As long as you have an excuse for why you have not achieved something, you can preserve the belief that you would have succeeded if only circumstances had been different. But the moment you take action and it does not produce the result you hoped for, that protective story disappears. You have to face the reality of the attempt and its outcome. This is why bold action requires genuine courage. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind of courage, but the quiet, everyday courage of a person who is willing to try knowing they might fall short and willing to try again anyway. That kind of courage is not something you are born with. It is something you build one action at a time. Here is something I think about deeply when it comes to excuses, and it is a perspective I rarely hear discussed. The language of excuses is almost always focused on what is missing. I do not have enough time. I do not have enough money. I do not have the right connections. I do not have enough experience. Every excuse is structured around absence and lack. But the language of bold action is focused on what is present and available right now. What do I have today that I can use? What is one thing I can do with what I currently possess? That shift from focusing on what is missing to focusing on what is available is not just a change in attitude. It is a fundamentally different way of processing your situation that leads to fundamentally different behavior and fundamentally different. There is a neurological dimension to this that I find particularly compelling. And I want to share it because it makes the case for bold action in a way that goes beyond motivation. When you make an excuse and avoid an action, your brain records that avoidance as the appropriate response to that type of situation. The next time a similar situation arises, your brain retrieves that recorded response and produces another excuse even faster and more automatically. But when you take a bold action in the face of an excuse, your brain records that response instead. Over time and with repetition, taking action becomes the automatic response to challenge, rather than producing an excuse. You are not just accomplishing one task when you replace an excuse with an action. You are rewiring the default response of your entire nervous system. Thus, let me address a specific category of excuses that I think deserves its own focused attention, because it is one of the most limiting and most common. These are the identity-based excuses, the ones that sound like I am just not the kind of person who does that. I am not disciplined enough. I am not smart enough. I am not confident enough. I am not a natural at this. These excuses are uniquely damaging because they are not just explanations for a single instance of inaction. They are declarations about permanent limitations that do not actually exist. The idea that discipline, confidence, and capability are fixed traits that some people have and others do not is simply not supported by evidence. Every trait that leads to success is developed through repeated action over time. The person who seems naturally disciplined built that discipline through repeated choices made over months and years. One of the most important things I have learned about the relationship between excuses and action is this. You do not need to defeat the excuse before you take the action. This is a crucial distinction. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. They wait to feel confident before they begin. They wait until the excuse no longer feels valid before they move. But that is not how change actually works. You take the action while the excuse is still present. You move while the doubt is still loud. You start while the fear is still real. The action does not require the excuse to disappear first. The action is what eventually causes the excuse to lose its power. You do not think your way out of an excuse pattern. You act your way out of it. Here is a practical tool I want you to use starting today, and it is simple enough to apply immediately. Every time you notice yourself producing an excuse for why you cannot do something that matters to your growth, stop and ask yourself one question. What is the one bold action I could take in the next 60 minutes that would move me forward despite this excuse? Not a big action, not a perfect action. Just one real and specific thing you can do right now that is aimed in the direction of what you want. Write that action down, commit to a time, and then do it before the excuse regenerates and the moment passes. That practice repeated consistently does not just produce results. It builds a completely new relationship between you and the challenges that used to stop you in your tracks. The person you are capable of becoming is sitting on the other side of the excuses you are currently accepting. Every single one of those excuses has an action that can replace it. The action does not have to be large. It does not have to be perfect. It does not have to guarantee a specific outcome. It simply has to be real. It has to be taken today, and it has to be chosen deliberately over the comfortable alternative of staying still. A single bold action, repeated daily, builds a life that excuses alone could never produce. The gap between who you are right now and who you know you are capable of becoming is not filled with better circumstances or more convenient timing. It is filled with the accumulated weight of actions taken boldly in spite of every excuse that tried to stop them. Number 8, track your progress every single day without fail. Most people have no real idea how they are actually spending their time and energy. They feel busy. They feel like they are working hard. They feel like they are making efforts toward their goals. But when you ask them to show you the evidence of that progress, to point to something concrete that demonstrates movement over the last 30 days, most of them cannot do it. Not because they were not trying, but because they were never measuring. And this is one of the most quietly devastating habits a person can have when they are genuinely trying to improve their life. Effort without measurement is like driving a car without a dashboard. You might be moving, but you have no idea how fast, in what direction, or whether you are running out of fuel before you reach where you are going. Here is something that I consider one of the most important principles in all of personal development, and it is supported by decades of research in behavioral psychology. What gets measured gets managed. When you track something consistently, your attention naturally focuses on it. Your decisions begin to revolve around it. Your behavior adjusts in response to what the data is showing you. This is not a passive process. Tracking actively changes how you act because it makes the consequences of your daily choices visible and impossible to ignore. When your progress is invisible, it is easy to convince yourself that things are moving in the right direction, even when they are not. But when you have a written record of exactly what you did and what it produced, reality is right there in front of you every single day with no room for comfortable self-deception. Let me explain what daily tracking actually does inside your brain, because this goes far deeper than simple record keeping. When you track your progress at the end of each day, you are engaging in a process called self-monitoring, which is one of the most effective behavioral change tools ever studied in psychology. Self-monitoring increases self-awareness. And self-awareness is the foundation of self-regulation. A person who does not track their behavior cannot regulate it effectively because they do not have accurate information about what they are actually doing versus what they think they are doing. Studies on everything from weight loss to financial improvement to skill development consistently show that people who track their behavior daily produce significantly better results than people who simply try hard without measuring. The act of watching yourself creates accountability to yourself that intention alone cannot produce. Now, I want to address something that many people feel when they first consider tracking their daily progress, and that is resistance. Some people feel like tracking is tedious. Others feel like it will make them anxious or obsessive. Some feel like they should be able to trust themselves without needing a written record. I understand all of those feelings, and I want to respond to them directly. Tracking is not about distrust. It is not about obsession. It is about honesty. It is about treating your goals with the same seriousness that a doctor treats a patient's health, that a coach treats an athlete's performance, or that a business owner treats their finances. In every area of high performance, measurement is not optional. It is foundational. The resistance to tracking is almost always rooted in the same thing: a fear of what the data will reveal. Here is something I want you to think about carefully, because it reframes the entire purpose of tracking progress daily. Tracking is not just about celebrating wins. It is equally valuable for revealing what is not working before too much time is wasted on it. When you track daily, you can see within days or weeks whether a specific approach is producing results or not. Without tracking, you might spend 6 months on a strategy that is producing nothing while telling yourself things are going in the right direction. The daily record is honest in a way that memory and feeling are not. Human memory is notoriously unreliable when it comes to assessing our own behavior. We remember our best days more vividly than our average ones. We tend to feel like we are doing more than we actually are. A written daily record corrects for all of those natural human biases. I want to give you my personal perspective on what tracking does to a person's relationship with their own goals over time. When you track your progress every day without fail, you begin to develop a completely different relationship with your goals. They stop feeling like distant dreams and start feeling like active projects with real and measurable momentum. You can look at your record and see that 30 days ago, you were at a certain level, and today, you are clearly further along. That visible distance between where you were and where you are now produces a very specific kind of confidence that no amount of positive thinking can manufacture. It is evidence-based confidence. The kind that does not fade when you encounter a hard day because it is rooted in documented proof of your own capability and consistency. Let me walk you through a practical and effective daily tracking system that is simple enough to maintain without becoming a burden on your time. At the end of each day, spend 5 minutes answering 3 specific questions in a dedicated notebook or document. First, what specific action did I take today toward my goal? Second, what result or feedback did that action produce? Third, what will I do differently or better tomorrow based on what I learned today? This 3-question framework takes less than 5 minutes, and it accomplishes something extraordinary. It keeps you honest about whether you actually took action. It forces you to evaluate the quality and effectiveness of that action. And it creates a forward-looking commitment that connects today's effort to tomorrow's behavior. That chain of daily reflection and commitment is how sustained progress is actually built. There is an emotional component to daily tracking that produces results in ways that pure logic cannot fully explain. When you open your tracking record and see a string of consecutive days where you showed up and did the work, you feel something specific and powerful. You feel like someone who keeps their word to themselves. That feeling is not trivial. It is one of the most motivating forces available to a human being because it is deeply tied to identity. You start to see yourself as a consistent person, a reliable person, someone who does what they commit to doing. And that self-image makes it increasingly difficult to break the streak, because doing so would mean acting in contradiction to the person you have come to genuinely believe you are. The tracking record becomes a mirror that reflects back an identity worth protecting. Here is something I think deserves direct attention when talking about tracking progress, and it is the difference between tracking activity and tracking outcomes. Tracking activity means recording what you did. Tracking outcomes means recording what that activity produced. Both are important, but most people who do track activity, they write down that they spent an hour working on their goal, but they do not record whether that hour moved them measurably closer to the result they are pursuing. Effective daily tracking captures both. It records the action and it evaluates the result. This dual tracking is what allows you to notice patterns over time. It is what allows you to see that certain activities produce consistent results, while others consume your time and energy without generating meaningful progress. Daily tracking also serves a function that is particularly valuable during the periods when motivation is low and the work feels difficult and unrewarding. In those periods, and every person pursuing a meaningful goal will experience them, your tracking record becomes evidence of why you should continue. You can look back at the days when you also did not feel like doing the work and did it anyway. You can see the progress that accumulated during those low motivation periods. You can read your own notes from difficult days and remember that the difficulty passed and the progress continued. Your tracking record becomes a source of perspective that your present feelings alone cannot provide. It reminds you that you have been here before and kept going, and that keeping going was always the right decision. One more dimension of daily tracking that I believe is fundamentally underappreciated is its role in teaching you about yourself. After 30 days of tracking, you will know things about your own behavior patterns that you would never learn from thinking alone. You will know which times of day you are most productive. You will know which environments support your focus and which ones destroy it. You will know which types of tasks you consistently delay and which ones you naturally embrace. You will know how your energy levels fluctuate across the week and how those fluctuations affect the quality of your work. That self-knowledge is extraordinarily practical because it allows you to design your days in a way that works with your natural patterns rather than against them. You stop fighting yourself and start using the honest information about yourself to arrange your effort more intelligently. The difference between a person who grows consistently and a person who grows in occasional bursts, separated by long periods of stagnation, is almost always found in their relationship with measurement. The consistent grower knows where they stand every single day. They know what is working. They know what is to change. They know how far they have come and exactly how far they have yet to go. That knowledge is power in the most practical and actionable sense of the word. It is not motivational power. It is directional power. It tells you where to put your energy, when to adjust your approach, and how to make each day more effective than the one before it. Tracking every day without fail is not a discipline imposed from the outside. It is a gift you give to your future self every evening when you sit down, open your record, and tell yourself the truth about the day. Number 9, face your fear head on and move anyway. Fear is not the problem. Your relationship with fear is the problem. Most people have been taught directly or indirectly that fear is a signal to stop, that when something frightens you, the appropriate response is to back away, wait until the feeling passes, or avoid the situation entirely. And because this idea feels protective and reasonable, millions of people spend their entire lives organizing their choices around the avoidance of fear. They choose careers that feel safe over careers that feel meaningful. They stay in situations that are comfortable over situations that could change everything. They protect themselves from the feeling of fear, and in doing so, they protect themselves right out of the life they were genuinely capable of living. Let me tell you what fear actually is at the biological and psychological level, because understanding the true nature of something is the first step toward responding to it intelligently. Fear is a survival response produced by a part of your brain called the amygdala. It was designed to protect early humans from physical threats like predators and dangerous environments. When your amygdala detects a perceived threat, it triggers a cascade of physical responses. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing quickens. Your muscles tighten. Your attention narrows. Your body is preparing to fight or flee. This entire response happens in milliseconds, and it happens automatically without your conscious permission. The critical word in all of this is perceived. Your amygdala cannot reliably distinguish between a threat to your physical survival and the discomfort of starting a new business, speaking in public, or having an honest conversation. It treats both with the same urgent alarm. Here is what I find most important about this biological reality, and why it matters deeply to anyone pursuing growth. The fear you feel before attempting something significant is not evidence that the thing is dangerous. It is evidence that the thing is unfamiliar and meaningful to you. Fear and excitement produce nearly identical physiological responses in the human body. The racing heart, the heightened alertness, the surge of energy are all present in both states. The difference between experiencing those sensations as fear or as excitement is almost entirely determined by the story your mind tells about what they mean. A person who interprets those physical sensations as dangerous will retreat. A person who recognizes those same sensations as the natural signal of meaningful challenge will move forward. The body sends the same signal. The mind decides what to do with it. Now, I want to address something very specific about fear that I believe is one of the most misunderstood aspects of personal growth. Courage is not the absence of fear. That definition of courage sounds inspiring, but it is practically useless because the absence of fear is not something a person can manufacture on demand. Real courage is the consistent practice of taking action while fear is still fully present. It is feeling the tightness in your chest, the doubt in your mind, the urge to retreat in your body and choosing to move forward anyway. That choice made repeatedly over time is what builds the kind of person who can do hard things. Not because hard things stop feeling hard, but because the person has built a track record of proving to themselves that they can act in spite of the hardness. Let me share something about the compounding nature of avoidance, because it is something most people have never fully considered. Every time you allow fear to make your decisions for you, two things happen simultaneously. First, you do not get the result or experience that the avoided action would have produced. Second, and more significantly, your fear of that specific situation grows stronger. Avoidance teaches your brain that the feared situation is genuinely dangerous, and that avoiding it was the right call. So the next time a similar situation arises, the fear response is faster, stronger, and more convincing than before. This is how small fears grow into large ones over time, without a single threatening event occurring. The avoidance itself feeds and expands the fear. And on the other side of that equation, every time you face a fear and act anyway, the fear associated with that type of situation gradually diminishes. I want to give you a real and concrete picture of what facing fear actually looks like in the everyday life of a person who is working to grow. It does not look like a dramatic cinematic moment where someone overcomes a massive challenge with perfect confidence. It looks like a person sitting with the discomfort of making a phone call they have been avoiding for 2 weeks and making it anyway. It looks like someone submitting work they are not completely satisfied with because they recognize that imperfect action beats perfect inaction. It looks like someone raising their hand in a meeting when they are not fully certain their idea is good enough. It is quiet, ordinary, and repeated. It happens in small moments that nobody else notices, but that the person doing it feels deeply. That is where real courage lives. Here is my direct and honest opinion on why people avoid facing their fears, even when they intellectually understand that avoidance is holding them back. Facing fear requires you to accept uncertainty, and the human mind has a deeply uncomfortable relationship with uncertainty. When you avoid a feared situation, you get certainty, the certainty of a familiar outcome, even if that outcome is disappointing. But when you face the fear and act, you enter territory where the outcome is genuinely unknown. You might succeed, you might fall short, you might be embarrassed, you might be surprised. That uncertainty feels threatening to a mind that prioritizes predictability. But here is the reality that growth requires you to accept. A life organized around certainty is a life organized around smallness, because everything worth having exists in the uncertain territory beyond your comfort zone. There is a psychological principle called systematic desensitization that I think every person pursuing growth should understand, practically even if they never know its clinical name. It works like this. When you expose yourself repeatedly and voluntarily to something that triggers a fear response in a way that is manageable and does not result in actual harm, the intensity of the fear response decreases over time. Your nervous system literally recalibrates. It updates its threat assessment based on repeated evidence that the feared situation did not produce the catastrophic outcome it predicted. This is why the first time you do something frightening is almost always the hardest. The second time is slightly easier. The 10th time barely registers the same alarm. The fear does not disappear entirely, but it shrinks to a manageable size that no longer controls your behavior. Let me talk about the specific physical experience of facing fear, because naming it clearly helps people recognize it when it arrives and respond to it more effectively. When you're about to do something that genuinely frightens you, you will feel a specific cluster of sensations in your body. Your stomach may feel unsettled. Your breathing may become shallow. Your thoughts may speed up and produce rapid-fire worst-case scenarios. Your hands may feel slightly unsteady. Your throat may tighten. These sensations are real, and they are intense enough that many people interpret them as signs that they should not proceed. But these sensations are not instructions. They are information. They are telling you that your nervous system has registered this as significant. Significant is not the same as dangerous. Significant simply means this matters and deserves your full presence and attention. Here's a practical approach to facing fear that I want you to apply the next time you encounter a situation that triggers avoidance. Before you react to the fear, take 30 seconds and do one thing. Name it specifically. Not just I am afraid, but I am afraid that I will start this project and it will not be good enough, and people will think less of me. Getting specific about the exact fear removes some of its power, because vague fear is always larger and more threatening than specific fear. A specific fear can be examined. It can be questioned. It can be assessed for actual probability and actual consequence. When you look at a specific fear directly and ask yourself honestly, how likely is this worst case and how survivable is it if it happens? You will almost always find that the realistic worst case is something you are fully capable of handling. And that realization is what makes the first step forward possible. One of the most valuable insights I have developed about fear and action over years of thinking deeply about human behavior is this. The version of you that exists on the other side of your most avoided fears is significantly more capable, more confident, and more free than the version of you that exists right now. Every fear you face and move through expands your sense of what is possible for you. It updates your self-concept in a way that nothing else can. Reading about courage does not produce it. Watching someone else face their fear does not produce it. Only the personal experience of choosing action in the presence of your own fear produces the genuine, durable, deeply personal confidence that transforms a person's life. That transformation is not given to you. It is built by you, one faced fear at a time. The fears that are most worth facing are almost never the dramatic, obvious ones. They are the quiet fears that show up in the daily decisions you make about your own potential. The fear of being seen trying. The fear of asking for what you actually want. The fear of committing fully to something important in case you fall short. The fear of being honest about your ambitions in a world that sometimes responds to ambition with skepticism. These everyday fears shape the texture of your entire life. They determine how boldly you pursue your goals, how honestly you communicate, how fully you engage with your own potential. Facing them does not require a heroic gesture. It requires a consistent daily practice of choosing the action you know is right over the comfort your fear is offering you. That practice, sustained over time, does not just change what you do. It fundamentally changes who you are.